A sausage looks simple: a familiar shape, a sealed package, and a product ready for the pan, grill, or breakfast plate. But imagine discovering that some modern high-protein sausages can be produced using an ingredient most people would never expect: carefully processed earthworm protein. The goal is not to put whole earthworms into a sausage. Instead, specialized facilities can process selected earthworm biomass into a controlled protein ingredient, which can then become part of a formulated food product. That raises an obvious question: how does something associated with soil become a carefully processed ingredient for human food? The answer begins far away from the supermarket shelf, inside a tightly controlled production system where millions of small organisms, precise equipment, food safety procedures, and automated machinery work together. And behind that familiar sausage is a manufacturing journey most consumers never see. High-protein foods are increasingly important in modern food production. Protein supports muscles, helps create a feeling of fullness, and plays a major role in everyday nutrition. Traditional protein sources include meat, dairy, eggs, soy, peas, and other crops. But food scientists are also investigating alternative sources that can potentially produce useful nutrients with different resource requirements. Earthworms are interesting because their bodies contain protein and other nutrients. In controlled production systems, specific species can be raised under managed conditions and harvested for processing. For a sausage manufacturer, however, the challenge is much bigger than simply finding protein. The ingredient has to be consistent, hygienic, traceable, and suitable for food formulation. That is why the real story begins with controlled raw materials and careful preparation. Inside the facility, the process starts when approved earthworm biomass arrives from controlled cultivation areas or dedicated production systems. Instead of arriving like conventional livestock, the material is transported in sealed, food-safe containers designed to protect it from contamination and excessive heat. Workers inspect incoming batches and verify identification, source records, and production information before anything enters processing. At larger facilities, weighing systems record the incoming quantity, while temperature and condition checks help determine whether a batch meets the required specifications. Every kilogram matters because the factory needs predictable input before it can produce a predictable sausage. Once accepted, the material moves toward preparation. This stage is about removing unwanted material before the protein can be processed. The earthworms are separated from growing media and other residual material using controlled screening, washing, and separation systems. Water and mechanical screens help remove soil particles and debris, while carefully controlled handling reduces the chance of introducing contaminants. Depending on the production method, additional purification or holding steps may be used before processing. The objective is simple: the material entering the next stage must be clean and consistent. This is especially important in food production because quality cannot be added at the end. It has to be controlled from the beginning. Once the prepared biomass passes inspection, it moves into the transformation stage. Now the material begins to change dramatically. The prepared earthworm biomass is measured into controlled batches. Processing parameters depend on the specific food formulation and the type of protein ingredient being produced. Mechanical equipment can break down the material and create a more uniform mixture. The purpose is not simply to make it smaller, it is to create consistency so that later processing affects the entire batch evenly. For sausage production, the earthworm-derived ingredient may be combined with other approved food ingredients such as conventional proteins, plant proteins, fats, water, seasonings, and functional ingredients. Mixing systems distribute these components throughout the batch. At this point, the unusual raw material is becoming something much closer to a recognizable food mixture. This is where the sausage mixture undergoes its main industrial transformation. The blended formulation is processed under controlled conditions designed to produce the desired texture, structure, and food safety characteristics. Temperature is especially important. Controlled heating can help reduce harmful microorganisms while changing the proteins so the mixture develops a firmer, more stable structure. The mixture is then directed through specialized sausage forming equipment Depending on the product, machines portion the material into consistent lengths and shapes before the individual sausages are separated. What began as a collection of raw ingredients is now visibly becoming a finished food product. The precision is impressive. Each portion needs to remain consistent so that cooking behavior, appearance, and serving size stay predictable. With the sausage mixture prepared, automated filling equipment pushes the formulation into its final casing or forms it into the required shape. Continuous machines can produce long strings of evenly portioned sausages at high speed. Sensors and mechanical controls help maintain consistent filling pressure and portion size. Workers remain nearby to monitor the equipment, replenish materials, and respond to problems. At this point, the product is no longer just a protein mixture. It has become a recognizable sausage, ready for the final safety and quality checks. Before anything can be packaged, the factory has to prove that the product meets its specifications. Samples may be checked for weight, appearance, texture, composition, and microbiological safety. Automated systems can inspect dimensions and detect irregular products moving along the conveyor. Laboratory testing provides another layer of protection, especially for a product involving an unconventional protein ingredient. If a batch fails a required specification, it is not simply sent forward. It may be isolated for investigation, additional testing, reprocessing where permitted, or disposal. This stage protects consumers and also protects the manufacturer's reputation. Only approved products continue toward packaging. The finished sausages now enter the packaging line. Automated machines portion the product into retail quantities, place it into food-safe packaging, remove or control air where required, and seal the packages. Labels provide essential information such as product identity, ingredients, nutrition information, batch codes, and dates. The packages then move through coding and inspection systems before being grouped into cartons. At the end of the line, robotic or semi-automated palletizing systems can stack cartons into stable configurations for transportation. The product that began as raw biological material is now a sealed commercial food product with an identity, a batch number, and a destination. From packaging, the cartons move into the factory's storage and distribution area. Depending on the product's preservation requirements, temperature-controlled storage may be essential. Forklifts and pallet movers transport the finished cartons into designated locations. Scanners record where each batch is stored, while inventory systems track quantities and product codes. This organization matters because food distribution depends on traceability. If a particular batch needs to be located, the factory must know exactly where it is. Rows of pallets may sit quietly inside the warehouse, but every one represents a finished product waiting for its next journey. When an order arrives, warehouse workers retrieve the appropriate pallets and move them toward the loading docks. Scanning systems verify the shipment before the cartons are loaded. Depending on the distribution network, the products may travel by refrigerated truck or another controlled transportation system to regional warehouses, distributors, supermarkets, or food retailers. The factory's responsibility is now transitioning into the wider supply chain. Thousands of individual packages can leave through a single loading dock, each carrying the result of a carefully controlled production process. Eventually, the journey reaches the supermarket shelf, specialty retailer, food service operation, or another point of sale. Packages are placed into refrigerated displays or other appropriate storage areas where customers see the finished product for the first time. A shopper may pick up the package, read the label, compare it with other protein options, and take it home. Then the industrial journey becomes personal. The sausage may be heated in a frying pan, cooked on a grill, added to a meal, or served as a convenient source of protein. And that is what makes the entire process so fascinating. What began with millions of tiny organisms raised under controlled conditions passed through cleaning, preparation, formulation, processing, forming, inspection, packaging, storage, and distribution before becoming something ordinary enough to sit on a kitchen plate. From an unexpected biological source to a finished food product, the journey shows just how dramatically modern manufacturing can transform raw materials into something designed for everyday life. Behind one simple sausage is an entire world of controlled production where biology, food science, machinery, logistics, and human oversight come together.